Welcome to another episode of the Lone Star Brujas podcast. I am your host, Sin. If you've been listening for a while, you know I have a deep appreciation for haunted history, not just for the ghost stories, but the real people and the documented events and the way that history and folklore become woven together over time. Victoria's Black Swan Inn in San Antonio, Texas, a place where documented history, local legend, and decades of paranormal experiences have earned a reputation as one of the most fascinating haunted locations in the state. Throughout this episode, we'll separate historical fact from local legend, explore the hauntings that have captivated visitors for decades, and talk about why this remarkable property continues to draw paranormal investigators, historians, and curious minds from across the country. Let's unlock the haunted history of the Black Swan Inn. We have to start long before the mansion was ever built. Thousands of years before Texas became Texas, indigenous people lived along Salado Creek. Archaeological evidence tells us they hunted, camped, and raised their families here. There may have been native burial areas on or near the property. While those claims remain part of local folklore rather than established historical fact, they've become woven into the legends surrounding the Black Swan Inn. Now let's fast forward to 1842. So Texas was still the young Republic of Texas, and Mexican General Adrian Woll marched into San Antonio with his army in an attempt to reclaim the territory. Texas volunteers, including Rangers under Captain John Coffee Hayes and Colonel Matthew Caldwell, met them along Salado Creek, and the Battle of Salado was brutal. Men fought and died where visitors now stroll through gardens and attend weddings. Historical records tell us dozens of Mexican soldiers were killed on or near this land. Now, while Texans suffered remarkably few casualties, reportedly only one Texan was killed against dozens of Mexican losses. So let me ask you something. If that much fear and that much pain and that much loss happened in one place, do you think that simply disappears? Or do places remember? Now, the house that followed 25 years later, in 1867, the Ripstein family settled the land and built their first structures on the property. It was a stone house and a barn overlooked Salado Creek. The barn is going to come back up in our story, so keep that particular part in mind. In 1887, the Mahler family took over the property and ran it as a working dairy farm, building the elegant two-story Greek revival home that still stands there today. Now, decades later, in 1841, the Woods Holbrook family purchased the property and renamed it White Gables. And in 1952, it passed to Hall Park Street and his wife Jolene Wood Street, a couple whose story, as you'll hear, doesn't end when their lives did. Over the years, the property has worn many names and many faces. Family home, dairy farm, wedding venue. Eventually, it became known as Victoria's Black Swan Inn. Now, on the surface, it's beautiful, elegant, historic, but according to countless visitors, it isn't empty. The hauntings, this is where history gives away the mystery. Over the years, visitors, employees, paranormal investigators, psychics, and even owners have all reported his experiences they simply couldn't explain. So let's go ahead and start outside. Imagine standing beneath the old oak tree after sunset. Everything is quiet. Then you hear footsteps, not one pair, but several. Heavy boots marching across the property. You look toward the sound and there's nothing. Some people have also reported hearing distant gunfire, horses, military commands, and even what sounds like soldiers preparing for battle. Now, many paranormal researchers believe that these experiences may be what's called residual hauntings, and the idea of that is Traumatic events leave behind an energetic imprint that occasionally replay itself. So, not as intelligent spirits, but it's almost like history is echoing through time. Whether you believe that's possible or not, the reports continue to come in, as visitors have also claimed to see soldiers dressed in 19th century uniforms standing near the creek. Some appear only for a moment, while others seem to be walking and patrolling the grounds. They blink and the figure disappears. Now, what do? Would you convince yourself that your eyes were playing tricks on you, or would you start questioning everything in the paranormal world? Now, one of the spirits that have been reported in or on the property is the woman in white. So every haunted house seems to have one, and the Black Swan Inn is no exception. Witnesses have reported seeing a woman dressed completely in white standing upstairs, slowly walking through hallways and disappearing around the corners. Many believe she's Jolene Wood Street, the same Jolene who lived here with her husband, Hall, back in the 1950s. Now, Jolene died of cancer in 1959, and some say he never stopped looking for her. Some also say that his spirit is walking the grounds as well, searching for her. But the part that is a little interesting for me is witnesses say that the two of them are never really seen together. So the two spirits are tied to the same land, the same house, and possibly the same love, but somehow they still have not found each other. Now, the children on the property is another interesting report as well. So a lot of emotional paranormal stories do involve children, and visitors have described hearing laughter echo through the empty rooms in the home. Tiny footsteps are heard running up and down hallways. There's sounds of children playing when no children are there. And the spirit most often named in these accounts is a little girl named Sarah Susie Mahler, tied to the Mahler family who ran the dairy farm there in the late 1800s. Now, visitors say she jumps on beds, she moves objects, and pulls harmless pranks on guests. Investigators have placed toys in rooms during paranormal investigations, and then later they claim that they've been moved by themselves, or they've been moved without anyone being able to explain why or touching them. So whether that is paranormal or if it's just a coincidence, it's still enough to make you pause and wonder what's truly going on. Now let's go ahead and get back to the barn. Now, this is the barn that I mentioned earlier in the episode, and this is the one that the Ripstein family built back in 1867. So reports mention that if the house feels sad, that means that the barn feels angry. Investigators believe that at least 3 male spirits linger here. Gustav Julian, he's connected to the property's early post-war owners, and a large, burly German man that many believe is Sebastian Ripstein himself. And the third presence has never really been identified. Now here's where it gets a little unsettling, is that multiple witnesses, mostly women, report these spirits as hostile, they're cold, aggressive, and it seems to be malicious energy. There's a sense that they're being watched, or that these spirits want them to go. Now, male visitors often don't report anything at all in the same space, but during one investigation, a deep voice was caught on an EVP recording, which was 2 clear words, "Get out." Investigators have also captured what looks like a man's silhouette standing behind one of the barn windows on a thermal camera, and the figure they're not able to explain it. Now, I'll be honest with you, the gendered hostility angle is worth thinking about, and here's why. Is it a genuine echo of a man who didn't respect women in his life, and at which that is not uncommon for the time? Or is it just a story that's been repeated so many times it's shaped, what people expect to feel? I don't know, but enough people independently over enough years have described the same experience in that barn. Now let's talk about the reports that seem to make even experienced investigators uncomfortable, and that's shadow figures. Witnesses describe seeing tall, dark silhouettes standing silently in doorways, watching, waiting, and then disappearing before anyone can get closer. There's no face, there's no expression, just darkness. Now, shadow figures have been reported in haunted locations around the world, so it's not something that, if you follow a lot of paranormal investigators, or if you are a paranormal investigator yourself, I'm sure that's not uncommon. But no one can really ever say for certain what they are. Are they spirits, or are they something, is it something entirely different? Or is it just our minds trying to make sense of something we don't understand? Then there are experiences that don't really fit neatly into one category. People have reported cold spots in the home in the middle of the summer, or even on the property in the middle of the summer. The feeling of someone standing directly behind them, someone touching them on their shoulder, only to turn around and there's no one there. Doors opening by themselves, lights flickering, and then whispers that seem close enough, or they're close enough to them, but there's nothing around them at all that's standing near them physically. And some visitors even report smelling cigar smoke, fresh flowers, or old perfume that appears without explanation and then it vanishes quickly. The owners themselves have also shared experiences over the years that convince them the stories aren't simply legends passed down from one visitor to another. Whether every account has a paranormal explanation or not, no one really truly knows. But as someone who practices brujeria, I believe respect should always come before the curiosity. And I am into the paranormal. It's not something uncommon for me to want to look further into. But whether you believe in ghosts, spirits, residual energy, or if you don't even believe any of it at all, these places still carry history. And in Mexican folklore or Mexican folk magic, we're taught to approach sacred places such as cemeteries or places of death, like battlefields, with respect, not fear, but just respect in general. Now, I never recommend provoking spirits. That's not something that I do. I don't recommend that you challenge them in a way that could be harmful for you. And also don't ask for anything to follow you home if you're not prepared to deal with it. So if you choose to visit a place like the Black Swan Inn, go with an open mind, honor the history, honor those who came before us. And then sometimes the greatest lesson isn't proving whether ghosts exist or not. Sometimes it's just remembering the people whose lives created the stories in the first place. Now, before we do close today's episode, I do want to share something that is very exciting. Now, every year, the Black Swan Inn hosts the Texas Paranormal Fest, hosted by the Curious Twins Paranormal. The festival brings together paranormal investigators, historians, authors, psychics, vendors, and members of the spiritual community for a weekend of education, exploration, and it's all at one of Texas' most fascinating historic locations. So this year, our very own madrina, Sarah, owner of Texarkana Candle Company, will be one of the featured speakers presenting an educational discussion on Santa Muerte. So if you've ever been curious about Santa Muerte, but you weren't sure where to begin, this presentation is the perfect introduction. She will discuss the origins of Santa Muerte devotion, how to prepare an altar, and how to approach her with respect and reverence. She'll also explain the symbolism behind Santa Muerte's rosary, traditional spiritual workings, and the deep faith shared by many of Santa Muerte devotees. So whether you're completely new to Santa Muerte or you're looking to build a stronger foundation in your devotional practice, we highly recommend that you attend this discussion. It's designed to educate with honesty and respect, and it's an opportunity to learn beyond misconceptions and better understand why so many devotees have built such meaningful relationships with La Santísima Muerte. So a huge thank you to the Curious Twins for creating an event that brings together haunted history, paranormal investigation, and spiritual education all under one roof. So if you're attending the Texas Paranormal Fest this year, be sure to stop by, say hello, support Sarah, support Texarkana Candle, and we'd love to meet our Lone Star Brujas family. So whether you leave the Black Swan Inn believing you've encountered a spirit or simply appreciating one of Texas' most remarkable historical sites, one thing is undeniable: the history. It happened. The battle happened. The people who lived and died there were real. What remains Well, that's something each of us have to decide for ourselves. And thank you so much for joining me today for another episode of the Lone Star Brujas podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who loves haunted history. I encourage you all to do your own research, as always, and let us know what you think in the comments below of what you find. So until next time, bye. Sí, cuando el sueño parece te miro, susurrándole a las hojas dormidas.